Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hello and welcome to today's Battletech review. Today we're going to be looking at another early Inner Sphere Omni Mech with the Owens. I had the luck to really have a whole bunch of them show up recently. We even managed to do that little photo shoot there. I was missing one to be able to do the whole variant cover. But anyways, I mean, the R version of the Owens is not that special compared to everything else. It is not one of my favorite Omni Mech. It is not even one of my favorite Inner Sphere early Omni Mech. It has some advantages, and some of them are pretty good, but it has some severe limitations as well. So we have to take some and leave some with the Owens. So let's just get into it. The Raptor is the first Inner Sphere Omni Mech, and it was really quickly built as a way of testing out what Omni technology would do. And it's not a terrible mech. We'll have to talk about it at some point. But it was quickly followed by a revision of the Clan Classic with the Blackhawk KU. I mean, you can literally build a regular Blackhawk with Inner Sphere technology with a few little tweaks. But the KU is a little bit bigger and allowed the Inner Sphere to just have a machine that was easier for them to manage. Both of those really gave Lucian Armor Work a good understanding on how to build these things. Really, they were the only ones to take this step forward in order to build Omni Mechs compared to like every single other factories around the Inner Sphere. They wanted to be able to build them, and the coordinator was more than happy to give them the money to do it. One of the big problems is always trying to program the onboard computers with the various pod systems and pod setups. That required a little bit more work than expected. I mean, just sticking new weapons and new equipment on a mech is, well, pretty difficult to do, but once you've got the pod thing down, it's not that terrible. But the computer that you have on these machines, they don't immediately figure out that this is a large laser, it should behave like a large laser. It has to know that, well, what is the effective range of a large laser? How does it work with the EAT conversion system and everything else? The next step for most of the Lucian people was to try to corner an existing market with something that was going to be better and trying to make more of a profit off the technology. The Jenner was the standard fast striker / scout for the Draconis Combine Muster Soldiery for the longest time. Law had just restarted production of the machine, thanks to a fairly big investment by the coordinator and the Gunji no Kandai, and both of them were quite happy with the new machines coming out, as their stock of Jenner was starting to run a little bit low. Lucian Armor Works' leadership saw an opportunity to increase their position in the DCMS by providing a new machine in the same kind of family, but with more advanced technology and equipment and more weapons diversity. They started having the concept for the Omni Jenner on the table when the Raptor came out, but it didn't take very long for it to be rebranded as the Owens. Now let's talk about the little bit of a controversy around the naming convention of that particular mech. You will have a group of people saying that the Owens is named after Gary Owen, which is an old drinking song associated with a Terran movie called They Died with Their Boots On, and cavalry units throughout the old Terran planet. The little bit of a problem I have with that is that it's Gary Owen and not Gary Owens. So it's a little bit different, and if you look into it, well, what you have is a legendary Olympic runner, Jesse Owens, who won multiple medals in the segregated states of the United States of America in the early 20th century. If you want to look at that particular place in history, the United States was a major country, but they had a lot of issues, especially with a part of their population that they were still segregating because of race strictly. You might have some of that in some states of the Inner Sphere, but nowadays this form of racism is quite rare, outside of, aiding the Capellans if you're a Fedrat, and if you're a Draconis Combine citizen, you'll generally aid everybody that's not Draconis Combine, but, the color of your skin matters very little. I mean, I like both of those explanations. I do prefer thinking of Jesse Owens as the reason why the Owens is called the Owens, because the Jenner is also named after a famous Olympic runner, Bruce Jenner, who won multiple medals as well. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's a little bit weird that the Draconis Combine wouldn't name a whole bunch of mechs after Terran runners from the 20th century from the United States of America, which is not where most of the Combine's culture comes from. But then again, don't know any legendary or well-known Japanese runners, so maybe there is that. While I personally have my reservations about the Owens, mostly due to the fact that I actually understand Omni technology nowadays, it was incredibly popular with everyone that had access to them. The DCMS created formations with them and the original Jenners as strike and scouting squads, and it also served as a spotter and a scout in all sorts of other formations. The ComGuard also purchased a significant number of them, and the Second Star League, anybody that was part of it, really bought a whole bunch of them as soon as they had the purchasing power to do so, and they were used extensively for the various operations the Second Star League did, basically Operation Bulldog and Operation Serpent. Unfortunately, Lucian Armor Work basically had to stop all OmniMech production during most of the Jihad, as their factory was heavily damaged by both internal and external operators. That's a bit of an odd situation that you have to read into a little bit. Outside of the Combine, though, Irian Technologies in the Free Worlds League had a production license for them, and they kept producing them, both as full units and as various kits to various variants for them, as much as they could. Unfortunately, that particular factory fell under the control of the Republic of the Sphere between 3081 and 3130 or so, and that basically slowed down the production to a crawl because the Republic of the Sphere thought that disarmament was a good idea. So really, what is an Owens? Well, at 35 tons, it goes about 130 kilometers per hour using a Vox 280XL engine. That's a big engine for such a small mech, but it's fairly functional. One other thing, though, is that you could easily have slotted a whole bunch of double heat sinks inside that engine, but the people at Law just stuck regular standard heat sinks in it because there was still a linchpin in the production of the double heat sinks in the Draconis Combine. This is one of the major limitations of that particular mech, and it causes it to have not as many good configurations as I would want. The rest of the body is quite simple. You got a basic chassis, no endo steel on there, and it ticks 7 tons of standard plates, which is quite good on a mech that size, making it rather survivable compared to things like the Jenner once again. One thing I really don't like is that you've got 3 pieces of hardware that are hard mounted on it on that little top mount there on the head, with a C3 slave unit, a tag laser, and a Beagle active probe. I could understand having hard-mounted the Beagle active probe. Those things were hard to link to the pod system and to the onboard computer, but the C3 slave and the tag lasers are very situational pieces of equipment, and you honestly won't need them all the time. And having something that you won't need all the time on an Omni Mech is a terrible idea. All of that leaves you with a meager 7 tons of pod space for you to use, which is really low. If you had that C3 slave and that tag laser out, you'd be with 9 tons of pod space, a little bit better. Still fairly low, but a little bit more functional. If you took out the Beagle active probe on top of it and just have everything in the pod, you'd have a decent load of equipment. The primary configuration of the Owens is meant to stay at a range when fighting and supporting the rest of its lance while scouting. The main weapons are a pair of arm-mounted 5-rack of LRM fed by a single ton of reloads. It will basically allow you to plink shot at long range or have utility, not both at the same time. That's could be a bit of an issue. At closer range, you have a medium laser to give you an okay bite and range, and a pair of small lasers when things went really close, and you can deal a bunch of damage with it. You're going to have some modern kits with ER versions of those lasers mounted, giving you a little bit more range, which is quite reasonable on a mech like this, and it's not going to tax the heat index too much with just one ER medium laser and 2 ER small lasers. I might even say here, take out the small lasers and add a ton of ammo for the LRM so you have a little bit more flexibility here. I mean, it's the primary configuration. You can modify it as needed since it's an Omni Mech, but there's a few things with this one that you might want to tweak. The alpha configuration is meant to take advantage of the C3 system for the other units in support of that Owens. Each arm mounts this Streak 2 tube of SRM, giving you a decent short-range punch, tank hunting capabilities, and, well, at the time, battle armor hunting capabilities. And at even shorter range, you had a pair of machine guns and a small pulse laser, meaning that infantry would regret fighting that particular machine quite a bit. Basically, you get close to your target, the other units with the C3 computers are going to be able to just bombard it or shoot it with their bigger lasers, while you plink at your target with those smaller weapons. It's not a terrible setup, but I would prefer a regular Jenner to the alpha configuration of the Owens. Bravo configuration is another specialized one, more dealing with brawling once again. The main weapon is a 6-tube of Artemis enhanced SRMs with a single ton of reload, giving you a decent punch at short range. I have seen some people take out the Artemis system to load an extra ton of ammo for more utility. It really depends on what you want to do. On the opposite arm, you have 3 small lasers and an extra one in the end, giving you a fairly good point-blank damage potential if required. You have a double B configuration that replaces all of those with ER small lasers, and it's going to work fairly well, even with the limited cooling capabilities of the Owens. Charlie configuration shows you that single heatsinks can be quite an issue when trying to build an Omni Mech, and this one is meant to be a Raider sniper, but it is limited because of that. The main weapon is a large laser in the left arm, which will give you a decent amount of damage and range for a light mech in the previous era. Nowadays, you'd probably want something like an ER large laser, but the problem is if you had stuck an ER large laser on that thing, it would basically burn you up. The opposite arm has a pair of medium lasers, which is pretty decent. And you will see some versions of the Charlie, like a double Charlie, that uses ER medium lasers instead of regular ones. But with all of that, you will tax the cooling system so much that it'll start being a major issue. Delta configuration is a dedicated NARC delivery platform, which is a thing that the Owens can do fairly well. It's fast enough, it doesn't have jump jets, but still, it's able to get close by and shoot those NARCs and tag things so that other peoples can bombard them with missiles, or if you've got other units with short-range missiles, still take advantage of the extra accuracy those things can do. You have a NARC missile beacon launcher mounted in your left arm with 8 pods ready to be delivered, which is normally enough for regular engagements. On the other arm, you have a 4-tube of SRMs, which will be able to take advantage of your own NARC launcher. It's not super fancy, but it works fairly well. And, well, the NARCs is not the most popular missile improvement system, but it's still good enough for most people. And I would appreciate to have this thing around if I was still using regular LRMs in my Archer. Echo configuration is a little bit more modern and started being used around 3060 by the DCMS, because the DCMS is about the only people who use medium-range missiles, and this one has a 10 rack of medium-range missile in the right arm, fed by a single ton of reload. In this case, it's usually sufficient, let's be quite honest, because there's no special ammo really for medium-range missiles available nowadays still. Opposite of this, the Echo manages to carry a medium and a medium pulse laser, giving you a little bit of bracket firing here, a bit more accuracy on that medium pulse laser. You know me, I don't like the inner sphere medium pulse lasers usually. There is a double Echo version of this as well, where both medium lasers are replaced with ER medium lasers, and there's an Apollo guidance system added to the MRM launcher. This is an unusual one. You won't see it very often. People don't buy that particular pod kit usually, but, you know, it's a thing that I've seen show up every once in a while. Romeo configuration was the one that was used during Operation Bulldog and Serpent as the 2nd Star League was attacking Clan Smoke Jaguar, and they were running low on any other parts that was not inner sphere. In this case, it used a variety of clan equipment that they got from scrounging off local bits. It copies the Echo configuration, keeping that big 10 rack of MRM as its primary weapon, even though I think a clan-graded 10 rack of LRMs would have been a little bit better. On the other arm, you have a trio of Clan ER medium lasers, which means you're going to run a little bit hot if you start shooting all of them, but I mean, that it gives you the same kind of range and damage potential as a trio of large lasers, meaning that this becomes quite a dangerous striker. Boxhot's configuration was introduced during the Jihad to fight the various Jihadi C3 network units. They were quite common at the time. I mean, C3I were omnipresent on battlefields during the Jihad, and even regular C3 systems were used by just about everybody else. The main piece of equipment here is a Guardian ECM system that is added to all the other electronics on the Owens. For weapons, this configuration actually packs a light PPC for a decent amount of range and a pair of ER small lasers for decent short-range punch. It's not fantastic, but it's usually enough to be able to be a threat while using your Guardian ECM to break up enemy formations, which is what this thing was really meant to do. Another advantage here is that there's a targeting computer set up for all those lasers and PPCs, so they are going to be quite accurate as well. Having access to the Owens, the Republic of the Sphere did use them when they could, and they decided to build the Golf configuration as a capture unit. This one is a little bit weird, and its only weapon is a TSEMP cannon, allowing you to shut down enemy mechs when you're lucky with hitting them. Another thing that is added on this is a supercharger, allowing you to go to speeds of up to 160 kilometers per hour to get where you need to be to try to shut down enemy units. It's not a terrible idea, but you know me as well. I'm not a massive fan of those TSEMP cannons. They work sometimes, not often enough for me to really love them. While Lucian Armor Works is not concentrating on building new Owens nowadays, they've got enough other things that they need to build. Irian Battletech has decided to use their license to build the Owen to start building the OW2, which is a little bit of an enhancement compared to the original Owen. They use Technicron's advanced manufacturing capabilities. It's another company in the same general region, and Technicron has access to clan-graded double heat sinks and endo steel in fairly large amount. So they've started introducing that to a new version of the Owen. Having double heat sinks on the machine will make it quite superior, and you increase your pod space by about 1.5 tons just by using that endo steel. You do have to mess with the internals a little bit, so it is a completely different machine. Another big change is the removal of that top assembly there where you had the Beagle Active Probe, the Tag, and the C3. So overall, you've got 12 tons of pod space to play with on that OW2, meaning that you're going to be able to make quite a number of different machines if required. Clan Spirit Cat or the Reborn Nova Cats are negotiating a license agreement to make their own versions of it, and I have a feeling that this particular mech might be more common in a near future. The Owens really shows the limitation of the Omni platforms when they're not properly optimized. Anything that has built-in equipment on an Omni Mac is generally a bit of an issue. Jump jets, I'm not as big of a detractor to. I prefer jump jets to be pod mounted as well if you have an Omni Mac, but I mean, if they're ARD mounted, you kind of have an idea of what you're going to be doing with that mech. The Owens equipment being ARD mounted really limits it in what it can or can't do. Another thing that would have gone a long way really is those double heat sinks, and it's a thing that is fairly common nowadays, but the DCMS was a bit stingy with those during the early clan invasion era because they really didn't have enough. The Panthers and Jenners of that era, as an example, don't have them at all. This is probably not the best Omni Mech out there or a thing that I would really undown for to add to my force because of its proper limitations. But if you have a C3 unit, it's not a bad addition. You just need to be able to figure out where to slot it in. I thank you very much for listening to me for so long. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.